Hey there, everybody. Welcome to the Water Trio podcast. I am flanked by two of my favorite astrologers, Alicia Yusuf and Kelly Surtees. Today, we are going to do a little bit of an update and installment of some of the astrology we can expect throughout June and July to give you a little bit of heads up for some of these major mid-year shifts that we are all going to be moving through. So, how are you girls?
Good to
Fantastic.
be back.
Yeah,
Great
so
to be back.
excited to be back doing this with you too.
I know. So let's get to it. I guess Jupiter in Taurus is the transit that everybody is probably thinking about, one of them thinking about and looking forward to. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on Jupiter in Taurus.
Do you want to go first, Leash?
Sure. I'm the one at a Jupiter perfection year, so why not?
Well, yes, why
Um,
not?
so Jupiter moves into Taurus 17th of May, and it's going to be in there until the 25th of May, 2024. And this is significant in and of itself because Jupiter hasn't sat in one sign for quite a while now. In Pisces, we actually got Jupiter three times, popping in and out when it was in Pisces. And in Aries, it was back in, we got two iterations of this. But now, Jupiter's entering this fixed Earth sign and it's just coming in like the bull. It's just going to sit and stay and chew its cud. And it just feels like such a slow, steady, serene energy. That's one of the things I love about Taurus. It's, for me as a Scorpio, it's definitely that settling, presence bringing energy that we always need as an antidote. But I think for everybody, it's a real opportunity to slow down, to really bring ourselves into our body and really honor those spaces that help us be in the present moment of what Taurus is pulling us into. So I think it's there's a couple of significant transits it'll be making during that period of time. One that's out of this, of course, is the square that it's going to be making to Pluto, right, just as it moves in. But in the period we're talking about, there is that conjunction with the North Node, but we'll get to that later. I just guess I wanted to hear more about what you are both thinking too about this and the kind of energy that it can bring.
Kel?
Yeah, I'm so looking forward to Jupiter and Taurus. I agree with everything you've said, Leash. And one thing that I want to amplify that you said, and then I'll just add a little piece, is I'm really looking forward to Jupiter staying in the one sign for 12 months. And I am looking forward to that earthy Taurus approach of measured, methodical. And I can't believe I'm actually going to say this. So that's how I know I'm aging, is I am looking forward to a little bit of the plodding, consistent energy that Taurus is known for. And I'm also thinking too about the embodiment. So being in the body, I'm thinking about being in nature. I'm thinking about spending more time in my garden, walking in green kind of settings. So that there's something about the sort of purest essence of Jupiter and Taurus that feels really calming to the nervous system, or it's sort of that embodied where you can be with things. It doesn't mean everything's happy, but it means you've got enough time to digest and process things. And then I do think technically about Jupiter, the greater benefic, being in a sign ruled by Venus, the other benefic, the lesser benefic. I think, we've had Jupiter in Aries really amplifying competition or war or military kind of goals. And so Jupiter coming into an earth sign ruled by Venus, is this a little more relational? Is it a little bit more about negotiation because we've got Jupiter guided by Venus? But I also think, it is very much about nature and the environment and green space and those types of things as well. So there's some of my kind of highlights of Jupiter and Taurus. And of course, it's going to make some big aspects in this period we're looking at, June, July, and then again in 2024 when Jupiter gets far enough into Taurus to interact with Uranus. But we've got lots of time to think about that. What about you, Cass? What are your sort of highlights of Jupiter and Taurus?
I definitely agree, all of the above. And I'm totally down with the garden and the flowers and just all, like, really kind of relishing or savoring the stillness and the slowness and the beauty And I think that's just going to be such a antidote to the faster pace of Jupiter. And it's almost acted like Mercury in the last couple of years, right? Dipping in and out, dipping in and out. And so just to really slow down, I think it's just going to bring a lot of peace and tranquility and peace of mind. I also think it's going to be the ultimate in sort of that smelling the roses type of energy, and to have a greater level of appreciation of, whether it's nature or a certain simplicity, and relishing in the abundance that you have, even if it's not the abundance maybe you want, but a greater appreciation for those little things, the five senses. Look at that pretty flower, or gee, that smells nice, or that food tastes great. It's just that, the really like simple pleasures, and sort of expanding the gratitude around that. I really do think that it's probably going to feel like a massively slow transit. Hey, it's Taurus, but also too, just because what Jupiter has done in the last, 2 iterations through Pisces and Aries. So I think it's going to be a really long, slow marinating process. And at a more kind of philosophical level, I think that sometimes, finding what meaning and purpose is all about doesn't happen in an instant. It happens through reflection and stillness and being in that present moment. Jupiter in Aries has been perhaps a little bit more of the experimental, or trying this and trying that. And I always think about what you've said to me many times over the years of our friendship, about having the planets in Taurus that I have this an innate awareness of what's good for me and what's not. And I think Jupiter and Taurus can offer that to all of us, and allow us to have enough stillness to kind of recognize what feels good, what feels, that double benefic energy, versus what has, maybe a touch of malefic energy, and just go, no, I don't like that, and move away from it. So I do think beauty and harmony, and just all of those kind of Venus things, sipping wine in a garden. I mean, it's just going to be wonderful. It's probably what I might be doing.
Oh, I love it. I love it.
Yeah, there are a couple of cautions I have with it too. Being the environmental scientist in all of this, is the accumulation side of Taurus. And I think that, especially that interaction with the North Node there, it's like, be careful what you'll accuse to accumulate under this. I mean, my beautiful Taurus mother, bless her, she has what we call the Holocaust cupboard, which, she doesn't have one packet of crackers, she's got 10. So we know that if there was ever an apocalypse, her house is where we're going to. And I think that can be that energy of Taurus, is to constantly, have a material accumulation towards security and safety. So being careful under Jupiter of, okay, what growth are you putting in place here? Because that can be where environmentally it's not so great. For me, I would love this to be, people start to be being a lot kinder to the planet. And as well, I think too, it's just about organic growth. We have had it, Aquarius, Pisces, Aries, it's been so much flow, so much excitement, so much happening in the mind. And now it's a chance to go, right, what am I physically going to materialize as growth underneath this phase? And I just love that it's going to be that consistent, steady, stable, year.
Yeah.
May to May. It's easy to remember.
And that's a good point that you bring up, Leash. To touch on it briefly, is the first aspect that Jupiter and Saturn make since the 2020 grand conjunction. This happens in June. I think we might have another one, but it's like that kind of grounded growth, or what do you want to bring out of the experience of the last few years? And we've had a lot of Taurus energy, eclipses since November 2021.
Yeah.
The Mercury retrograde that's just happened. So it's like, what wisdom do you take from those cycles that you want to expand upon, or fertilize in some way, to use a bit of a Taurus analogy there. So yeah, interesting. Okay, so that's Jupiter and Taurus. I guess something else that's going to be on people's lips for this time period is Pluto coming back into Capricorn. This is going to be joy for some of us, for those early fixed planets, just get a little bit of a breather. And those in the late cardinal are a little bit back in the thick of it for a little bit of time. Sorry, Leash. So what are your thoughts about Pluto's, I guess, return to Capricorn?
Yeah, I think this is a really interesting one. So I think it's June 11th that Pluto will retrograde back into Capricorn. And that kind of brings to a conclusion this sort of temporary preview of Pluto in Aquarius that we've been having. And, Pluto coming back into Capricorn is like, what is unfinished? What is unresolved? Not just from earlier this year, but what has been going on for the last 15 years that you are questioning, that you are wanting to change. One way I've been really getting my head around the Pluto sign change is just reminding myself, Pluto has been in Capricorn for 15 years. What have I done, in my life since 2008, 2009? What am I questioning? What am I wondering if I should do differently? Where am I going into this more investigative, questioning process? Because I think we all get very excited about Pluto going into a new sign, and there is things to learn about what the next 20 years is going to be like. But I also think it's important to have that sort of theme around conscious closure. What is winding down, or what are we transitioning out of? And so I think a huge part of this second half of 2023 is doing some of that sort of conscious winding down, questioning things that have been around a long time, obligations, loyalties, alliances, structures or systems that you have built your life on, or that have been a huge part of how you've lived. It's not saying everything needs to come apart at the seams. This is more of a really thoughtful, intentional questioning, reflection, and then maybe adjustment or restructuring. And so I'm thinking, I guess, a little bit of the big picture of Pluto coming back into Capricorn. We've got until early Jan 2024, I think, that Pluto will now be in Capricorn. I don't actually think it's the last time Pluto's in Capricorn. It comes back for another little piece in 2024. So we're very much in this place of transition with like one foot in the old world and one foot in the new. And Pluto coming back into Capricorn is like, we've got some things we need to attend to, that we need to apply wisdom and maturity, but also a little bit of strength and fortitude, because Capricorn is the sign where we need to be maybe making necessary choices that are not necessarily our feel-good choices. So there's some of the thoughts that I have about Pluto coming back into Capricorn. And it'll give you a chance, I think it'll give everyone a chance to kind of catch their breath about what Pluto in Aquarius is looking like. And then it's like, what do we need to attend to? That's not done yet. But that's sort of my sense of it. What about you gals?
I agree with everything you said, Kel. It's that real like liminal, because at the end of the day, Pluto moves so slowly, it is really got its foot in both worlds now for the next couple of years. And it reminds me of when I was moving countries. And it's that sense of, that last kind of week before you actually go, you've got your head in one place.
Such a
you're
good
kind
analogy,
of thinking about,
Leash.
yeah, what am I going to be doing when I get there? But it's like all the things you've got to do to get yourself there. And I think so it's almost like we've kind of had to think of, okay, and really, my suggestion for everybody is look at the houses that this is for you. It's not just about the signs, but it's like, okay, which areas of your birth chart is it moving from to? And so the themes here of like, I remember when we moved back from Palestine and Israel to Australia, we really had, we were at post offices, sending things across. We were shutting down bank accounts there and, trying to open new ones here and, looking at buying a car, all those kind of things. So, and, selling the one that we had there. So it was this sense of it needs to be closure in one place so that there can be that powerful plutonic dynamic in another, that it enables it to move forward. So exactly what you were saying, Kel, that conscious closure that allows us to bring that metamorphic energy of Pluto to another area without thinking, oh crap, that hangover from my last house is still holding me back.
That's such a good analogy.
What about
Leash?
Yeah, it's a good one. And then like the plane trip is like the journey itself, and then you spat out at the other side and you're like, Skippy in the headlights. What? I'm here? Like that door's closed now. That part of my life is over. Yeah, I think Pluto, especially in Capricorn, is really this kind of, how have you given your power away, either in an intimate setting or with authority and systems, the control and manipulation and all those dynamics. And I think sometimes when such a slow mover like Pluto comes back into Capricorn, it's not till like it comes back and then sometimes that realization or that dawning happens and you go, what is this, what I've been doing for the past 15 years? So it gives you that opportunity to kind of clean up or tidy up and to move into that new area. So collectively I think there might be some people that make some new realizations about structures and systems and what have you. And then, as you girls said, personally, like look to your house, what have been some common threads for the past 15 years that, might be little things, but, little things have that compounding effect, or maybe it was just this kind of like one big thing. And it might be a little bit, those power or control or manipulation kind of dynamics, even some self-sabotage stuff, like where have you held yourself back or, and various things like that. So I think Pluto coming back into Capricorn will kind of be a little bit of an awakening period to that, because sometimes like when you're in something, you don't really realize you're in it, and then you get out of it and then you go back into it and you're like, WTF, why did I put up with that for so long? Or, why did, it just looks different because you're coming back into it with fresh eyes, fresh perspectives, new experiences. It's like getting back with an ex, it might be okay for the first few times. And then you're like, what am I actually doing? So,
Yeah.
if you've got a Cancer rising, that might be true, but you get the gist, right? So it is that sort of, you've got a little bit of this Pluto and Aquarius wisdom and experience now, and which will make your Capricorn house just look so much different.
Yeah, you touched
Reminding
on
me of that Gloria.
yeah, sorry.
Sorry, Kel,
please.
just quickly, what Cass was saying, that Gloria Gaynor song, I will survive, I wish I'd changed those stupid locks. I wish I'd give away the key.
Yeah, well, it'll be interesting, so if you've got any like, Venus at a late degree of Capricorn or something, I'd love to hear. Are you going to say something, Kel?
I was just going to say, yeah, one thing, the word that came up for me when I was listening to what you were saying was this idea of revelations, which is sometimes really correlated with Pluto. And it's not at the beginning of a Pluto transit, sometimes not even in the middle of it. It's really towards the end where you're like, oh, now I see whether there was manipulation or there was a control dynamic in play, or like the office politics or the family politics. And when it's kind of revealed to you, you're like, oh my gosh, how did I not see this? Or now I immediately need to change my choices or update my patterns of behavior because I have a sense of like, there are things going on here that maybe I wasn't aware of. And so that revelatory quality of Pluto, maybe bringing things that have been hidden or been a little bit obscured into the light. I'm really intrigued as to how that comes into sharp focus as we transition through this kind of end of the Pluto and Capricorn cycle.
One point I want to bring up that might be helpful for people to sort of think about or contextualize is that sort of that new year period of 2021 into 2022, we had a Venus retrograde in Capricorn. And so that was the last time we had a tiny bit of Mercury in the January, February, but for the most part, Venus was retrograde in Capricorn, which kind of might have given you a little bit of awareness of what we're moving into now, not just with the Venus retrograde, which will be our next topic, but also to help connect the dots with what you might experience with Pluto moving back into Capricorn. So with that, little segue.
Just one more point before
as
well, just the way that Pluto is going to interact, the nodes moving into...
thank you. Yes, please. Flesh that out for us.
Aries and Libra as well. That's a big thing that's going to be happening in this period of time too. And that in and of itself will also be interacting with Pluto. So, we've got the nodes changing sign. Oh gosh,
July 17th.
Yeah, that's what I've got.
18th of July here. And, pretty quickly they're going to square Pluto. And then we've actually got that last eclipse that happened on the 20th of April, close enough, at that 29 degrees of Aries,
that
close
tie
to where
in
Pluto
there.
is at zero degrees in Aquarius. So there's something about the way that Pluto is going to trigger these off. And, what I see with planets square the nodes is they, Judith Hill talks about it taking us up and down the spiritual path of evolution. So
Okay.
exactly that, those kind of power dynamics or those revelatory insights that we may receive could be tied into eclipse messages as well. These sudden flashes of insights or these shifts in circumstances that go, oh, it's like they rip the veil from the eyes and suddenly you're like, right, actually that situation or that relationship is not helpful for me or is holding me back or is keeping me, I find with Pluto, it's often what's holding me under or what's keeping my feet in the underworld. And I love what you're saying, Kel, about how, it's like you climb out of the underworld up to the other side, and that's when you really get a clear picture on it. So I do wonder if those kind of series of eclipses and the Pluto square the bends will help with that on the nodes. Spirit ones will help with that too.
Yeah, I know this is something that people of, various evolutionary schools of astrology, Pluto and the nodes, big topics for their sort of way of approaching astrology. And it's not a system that I work with, but I know when I see this show up, whether it's, via transit or in natal charts, I often sort of feel that it's this kind of, do I stay or should I go type of energy. It's like, do you stay in something that's familiar, safe and comfortable, or do you kind of, make that kind of difficult square opposition, the more challenging aspects, and maybe stretch or compromise and move into, something perhaps, with potentiality or possibility, but a little bit more unknown. So, we haven't even really talked about just the nodes changing signs in of themselves before we sort of launched into that square. So, the nodes move out of Taurus, Scorpio, and move into Aries, Libra. So it's kind of interesting, this sort of key shift, because we're still looking to Mars and Venus as the rulers. But what's happening from the North Node ruled by Venus to the North Node being ruled by Mars? And so there is a sort of an opposition kind of occurring there. And we're moving from perhaps that Taurus Scorpio kind of more resourcey type of axis versus the more relating axis. So do either of you have anything to say about the nodes in Aries and Libra generally?
Yeah, I mean, I do think it's a huge feature of the mid-year period, the nodes changing signs. The nodes just change signs every 18 months. So yeah, North Node into Aries, South Node into Libra. This is a little more relational. It's a little bit more interactive. We've had the nodes in Taurus Scorpios, which has been a lot more about Taurus Scorpio, a lot more about resources and the economy. It's been about like physical matter and money. That's the Taurus Scorpio nodal pair. And so coming into Aries Libra, it is a little bit more, I think, about alliances. It's, the Aries Libra independent versus partnership. And so I think the eclipses, as we experience them on the Aries Libra axis, are going to kick up questions collectively about alliances. Which countries are friends with which other countries, and which countries are enemies with which other countries, if you like at the collective level. I think if you want to talk about the nodes in Aries and Libra personally, the most individual way to do that is to look at the houses and the house topics of Aries and Libra in your personal chart. And, the nodes have this agitated churning, they kind of unsettle things, they stir things up. And so when things get stirred up, we can sometimes be aggravated, but we can also be more open to doing things differently. And so I think as the nodes are, changing signs, there's one part of our life, the Taurus Scorpio part of our life, that like the muddy waters are calming down and getting clear again. Whereas coming into Aries Libra, there's a little bit of an unsettled quality that is going to get stuck things going, but also stir up things that we might have been okay staying as they were. So we sort of know we're going to get a fair amount of change and movement wherever the nodes are coming in.
Yeah, as the beholder of a pair of nodes in Aries and Libra, it will be an opposition, granted, though I do feel like with the North Node in Aries, that for some people, the challenge or the invitation is to go it alone, like try something that might be entrepreneurial or independent of what you might normally do. It's almost this kind of lone wolf energy to it, but also remembering that a wolf is never really alone. And if a wolf does find itself in the lone position, it generally doesn't survive, right? Wolves are kind of pack animals. So it might be sort of like leaning into the support of a relationship or a community or a group of people, but then also finding ways in which you can still strike out away from those and do something that might be independent of the group, or exploring a personal passion or a pursuit, and doing something that might just be, more energetic or even physical in some way. And again, to your point, Cal, like the houses are going to give you a little bit more information about that. How can you still lean into some sort of support system or relationship, but then, do something, for yourself or on your own in some capacity. And, there is always that me versus we dynamic in Aries and Libra, and that constant compromise between like your personal desires or wants, but also the consensus of someone or someone else or something else, or, what those other more harmonious or peacekeeping parts of life that we can't just totally do what we want all of the time. We do sometimes have to, sprinkle a little sugar on various parts of our life so we can go and do that other thing. And so that might be just finding that sort of diplomatic sweet spot, as per the houses in your birth chart, that nice balance between sweetness and saltiness that keeps everyone happy.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'm talking about it as interdependence. It's like, it's not independence and it's not codependence. It's that place in the middle of like, okay, where can I be myself, but still no man has an island, so what does it look like in a relationship territory in that place? I find it really interesting that the nodes swapping over with Jupiter as well, the North Node. North Node is that place where we're hungry for, or we're not always satisfied. So, when the Jupiter conjuncts the North Node on the 2nd of June, it's like, and then, that shift in 17th, 18th of July, it's like, okay, suddenly this area that Jupiter's been focusing on and bringing a lot of growth and a lot of excitement and exuberance to, the North Node's going to shift in there and continue to pull us towards, okay, what can I materially grow in this area? And then Jupiter's going to come in the other side where the North Node's been. So there's such a focus of growth and accumulation in these two areas of your chart, just to be aware of and thinking about when you're looking at how the eclipses start to trigger this off too.
That type of energy. Cool. So I guess there's probably one more thing. Yes, my memory, and that is
an important thing.
Speaking of keeping the peace and Venus and things like that. I mean, Venus is a very significant star in 2023, and in June, I believe, it's when she actually ingresses into Leo, and then come July, she's sayonara, I'm going on holidays. So let's talk all things Venus retrograde.
For sure. I mean, the one thing that, yes, I want to talk about Venus retrograde. And I also just want to say, I think it's June 5th that Venus comes into Leo, and she will be in Leo until October. I think until about the second week of October. So we're getting, 4 full months of Venus in Leo. And that's, 4 times as long as she normally spends in a sign. Typically, Venus will spend about 4 weeks in a zodiac sign, and she's going to be there for 4 months. So, at a personal level, people might think about, oh, well, my Leo house is about X topics, and I'm going to be building a new and deeper relationship with that part of my life because we get this extra emphasis. But of course, yes, Venus Leo retrograde. The retrograde itself starts on July 22nd. Venus will be starting her retrograde or stationing retrograde at 28 Leo. And then she's going to be retrograde for the end of July, all of August, until the very start of September. And so, oh my gosh, there's so much to say about it. The thing that's popping into my mind that's really pressing, well, there's 2 things, I think. One is that this Venus retrograde in Leo is similar to the Venus retrograde in Leo in the middle of 2015. So for anybody who's thinking about your own chart, Venus retrograde cycles have an 8-year timeline. If we think about Venus being retrograde in one particular sign and being retrograde again in that same sign. So it was sort of June, July, August of 2015 that we had Venus retrograde in Leo previously. So you might notice a link between some topics that were important in your life in the mid-2015 period that you're revisiting, updating, making some improvements around in the middle of 2023. But the one thing I love about Venus in Leo is that this is a placement that really speaks to me of quality control or standards. And so there's something about Venus in Leo about, Venus being in the sign of the sun, where there is confidence, there is sort of this deservingness. Venus in Leo is not lacking in a sense of worthiness, if you like. And so as Venus takes us on the retrograde loop through Leo, I think some of the issues or the questions or the things that might come up for us could be related to, am I coming from a place of insecurity here, or am I operating in a way that, I am sort of really confident in my worthiness or deservingness? And I think that'll be one interesting piece about how our insecurities sometimes trip us up. We compromise because we don't think we can ask for what we really want, or we don't take the lead when we really have a strong opinion about something. We want to, not offend people. So I think there's something in here about sort of like each of us being encouraged to kind of be a little more expressive, maybe in the values or desires or affections that we have, but not getting it right the first time, because of course a retrograde is an opportunity to go back over things. And so that's just sort of some general themes about Venus retrograde in Leo that are on my mind. But what about you gals? What are some of the things coming up for each of you?
Yeah, there's quite a bit of the similar threads that I've been thinking that you've mentioned. And when you think about Venus, just her sort of pure significations, she wants that smoothness or that flow, that sort of, speaks to popularity and friendship and things, just those kind of social graces and pleasantries that just keep everything really nice. And, in Leo, it's, hang on a minute, that's not what feels authentic to me, or this is a version of my expression that's not coming from the heart. And so when Venus moves backwards, it's this question of, how am I compromising my relationship style or way of relating in some way, shape, or form? And of course, the sign is going to really, speak to that. And so I think Venus in Leo has the potentiality to be a little bit of an internal pushback against some of the kind of cultural directions that we're heading into, and perhaps going, well, the hive mind and this collective group think and what I'm told to say or want, all these things that are going on, the individual might be starting to think, well, yeah, this isn't for me, and I'm going to just sort of shine in my own light and do things in my own way. Yeah, that might be a little bit of a lonely road at times, but I think that sort of quality of the everlasting light of the sun will ring true in the end. And so again, it's about that self-expression and that confidence and the endurance. And so if you want something to last, which might be, a creative project, maybe it's a relationship, maybe it's income stream, whatever it is really about kind of going, well, maybe my boss wants me to do it this way, but I'm going to do it that way, or maybe like I've got to do X, Y, Z to appease an algorithm, but I don't want to express myself that way, and I'm going to do it X, Y, Z way. So it is a little bit kind of maybe a little bit of a pushback, but I think, Leo has that endurance, and that might be a little bit tricky through the retrograde to find that sort of pure expression, but it will be, ring true in the long term. What are your thoughts, Alicia?
I totally agree with everything you're both saying. I think the only thing that I want to add is, think about this is Venus in a fire sign. There's so much about passion, the decisions or the choices or the values that are made from our heart, from that passionate place. And it's I think it'll be interesting, because Venus retrograde is when literally she disappears from the sky. This bright light that we see in the mornings or the evenings is not there in the moment. So it's like Venus has gone underground. So it's this period of, okay, how can all of us go underground and go, what is it that my passions are telling me about the situations or the relationships that I want to be in? And similar to what you were both saying, it's like, am I just in this relationship because I should be, because Judy's telling me to be, or is it because I'm excited about this person or enthusiastic about this situation, and that's where I want to be? So it's that kind of 100-day cycle in total that we'll be going through this, where Venus is hidden. But with that 40 days in particular, where, it's that retrograde cycle. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see, I think, especially because Venus is ruling Jupiter, so Venus will hold sway over that, and will also hold sway over the South Node at that period of time as well. To see, okay, but especially that Jupiter in Taurus, it may feel like Jupiter moves into Taurus, the growth's happening, and then suddenly it kind of comes to a standstill, or it slows down even further. And it's causing us to really think, okay, am I coming from my heart here? Or am I coming from a place of enthusiasm and passion here? So it always makes me think of Bette Midler. She's got Venus in Leo. In that movie, The Wind Beneath My Wings, where a friend gets really sick. And so she's kind of paused to rethink about her relationships and, who was important, who helped lift her up.
It's been quite
it's
musical,
also herself.
this podcast.
I know.
Our mentions of songs and things.
Love it.
Yeah.
I do think that, just really quickly on that, the Venus retrograde ruling Jupiter, and I know we'll talk about this in future episodes, but the Venus retrograde, like Venus will actually directly interact by square with Jupiter and Uranus. And there is something in there with everything you've said there, Leash. It also makes me think about legal matters or ethics or kind of moral choices that are pertaining to maybe relationship matters or feminist topics or even women's issues, with the Venus retrograde, in Leo, connected to Jupiter, an aspect to Jupiter. It does feel like there is that Jupiter side of it, the rules or the ethics or the morals or the laws, that is a big piece of this Venus retrograde, I think, as well.
And bringing women to the heart of the matter,
like
Venus
women making
Leo.
laws about their own experiences and their own bodies, for instance.
Yeah, that'd be great, wouldn't it?
What a novel approach. Or even just having female representation. But we're all going to get on our bandwagons in a minute.
Well, it is Venus and Leo. Hello.
Right?
But one point I want to make, to maybe like put a little silver lining on what is a little bit of a tricky transit, is that when Venus, it's more August story, but she does make some lovely, when she rises as the morning star, she's going to square Jupiter. So that's a really lovely, like, I'm back, baby. So do kind of, the process may not be fun, but the results will be worth it. So I think that's probably what, the Venus retrograde.
That's a beautiful way of summarizing it. Yeah.
Yes. Well, with that, we should probably wind up this show. So let's quickly talk about what we've got coming up. Does anyone have anything they'd like to share with our listeners?
Always have things to share. I think when we release this, I will have my relationship astrology course will be running, the live cohort. So if anybody wanted to jump in on that, you could. And on June 26th, I have a 4-part training about career and life direction in astrology, looking at both natal tendencies and timing factors relating to that. So if anyone was interested in exploring either of those topics, you could just pop over to my website, kellysastrology.com, and find out more or sign up. What about you two?
Leisha?
Each Jupiter ingress, I launch a free ebook. So if anyone wants to know more about Jupiter in Taurus and how it may impact your chart, then you just need to go and subscribe to my mailing list on my website. I don't have anything planned right now. We're recording this episode a bit, but I have just done, for the Jupiter in Taurus juice, I've got a webinar I've done with a counselor / astrologer colleague on trauma trauma in astrology and weaving the two together, and that will have some great resources in there actually for those who are wanting to work more with their nervous system, and there will be more things. I'm really planning some good juicy Jupiter and Taurus stuff for this period. So yeah, sign up to my website or sign up to my email on my website to get the updates on that. What about you, Cass?
Yeah, June 7, I am taking in a new cohort of astrology students for a year-long program, taking you to the very beginning of astrology. So the program's not just about teaching you, all of the language and the tools, but also what to do with them. So there's a lot of one-on-one, one-on group, weekly calls, mentorship, guidance, general astrology questions, everything from chart readings, starting a business, all the things. So that starts June 7. Enrollment is open and all of those details are available at cassandratyndall.com. So, well, it was so great to connect to you both and with all of our lovely Water Trio listeners. I do hope you enjoy this episode and the season ahead. Love to hear about, what are you looking forward to with these transits? What area of your birth chart is it all happening in? And of course, leave us those comments, like and subscribe and all that stuff, and share this video with your astrology friends. That would be awesome. Alrighty, until next time, everyone. We'll see you then.